conflict, civil strife and persecution. We particularly pray for places that we see daily on the news, especially remembering at this time Ukraine. We pray for people who are persecuted for their beliefs and for being in the wrong ethnic group. We remember before you, Lord, those places that have slipped out of the news, but where your presence is still needed to raise up people of goodwill, to bring peace and justice. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Lord, we bring before you our nation and the tensions and uncertainties facing us at the moment. Help us to realize that you are a certainty on which we can rely. We bring before you political leaders and parties of all opinions and ask that their debates and their differences may be held and put forward without rancor and bitterness, and so help us to bring the nation together in a spirit of tolerance. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. We bring before you, Lord, our community. Help us always to remember those for whom life is a struggle, especially in the current cost of living crisis, the poor, the homeless, those who are ill, and those who are facing this time in the shadow of bereavement. We give thanks for those who, over the last 850 years, have been influential in shaping the life of this borough. In looking forward, we pray for your blessing on all councillors as they face huge challenges in directing the future of the town and borough. We ask, Lord, that you will bless this borough of Newcastle-under-Lyme, this county of Stafford, and our sovereign Lord, the King, and the whole nation. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. And please, if you would like to, please join in the words of the Lord's Prayer with me. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you. Yeah. No, sorry. Right. Yeah. Are all members happy to be seated, please? Thank you. Welcome, members, to the meeting. To everyone who has joined us this evening for this very special meeting to celebrate the Borough 850th anniversary of being granted a royal charter and also to appoint an Honorary Alderman. Welcome also if you are watching on YouTube, where we are hosting a live stream of our proceedings this evening. If you would like to remove your jackets, we'll invite members to remove them if they wish to do so. Good evening, members. Before we begin, I need to go over the usual housekeeping rules. There are no fire drills planned for this evening, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building by the nearest exit and assemble in the Queen's Gardens at the front of the building. Please do not re-enter the building until you're advised to do so. I'd like to remind members of protocols around speaking during this meeting. No member should speak until invited to do so by myself. If you wish to speak, please could I ask you to raise your hand high until you've been acknowledged. Please, would all members in the room use their microphones whenever they speak, as without them, anyone watching online will not be able to hear you. To use the microphones, please press the button at the front of your centre when invited to speak and wait a moment for the light on your microphone to come on. Please remember to turn off your microphones once you have finished. Please could I ask at the end of the meeting to make sure that you take all your belongings and waste with you. Thank you. Before we begin, you will see that on your tables, there is a special edition of this evening's agenda for you to keep as a memento of this special year. Inside the agenda, you will find a copy of the recreated Royal Charter for Newcastle-under-Lyme. The recreation was produced by illustrator and author and literacy champion Glenn Martin James, using authentic period links and paints and written with a goose quill, just how documents in 1173 would have been written. The original produced by Mr. James is permanently on display at the Guildhall and in the Mayor's Parlour. There is also commemorative 850th anniversary celebration mugs for sale this evening. If you'd like one, please see Jeff after the meeting tonight. Newly appointed aldermen will receive a free mug. Wowee. Gosh. In fact, I know. In fact, I'll get one myself. Anyway, let's move on. We will now commence the business for this evening. Agenda item 1, apologies. Turning to the agenda now, starting with agenda item 1, I receive apologies from Councillor Wendy Brocky, Amy Bryan, Jill Waring, Paul Waring, Ruth Wright, Mike Stubbs, Leslie Richards and Paul Northcott. Do we have any further apologies, please? Councillor Tagg.
Councillor Joan Wheeldon.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. The next agenda item is item 2, declarations of any interest. Are there declarations of interest from any members or officers in relation to any items of business contained with this agenda, please? No, thank you. Agenda item 3, members, is to receive the earliest set of minutes recorded by the council dated 1368. You will find an image of those minutes along with the translation on pages 13 through 17 of your agenda. Are we all happy with, yes? Good. Councillor Tagg, I invite you to move the minutes from 1368, please, and say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And firstly, could I just echo your welcome to everybody this evening, particularly all of the former councillors and also their families that have come tonight and are in the public gallery, and also to members that have come this evening as well. Now, of course, as you said there, you know, from I wasn't around in 1368, or neither was anybody here, so we can't officially move the minutes. But as we gather this evening to commemorate this significant 850 anniversary, it's great to have part of our agenda this historical document, which has been translated from Latin from the oldest surviving council meeting, which is from the year, as you said, 1368. Thank you to the volunteers of the museum who a few years ago scanned in and translated large proportions of historical documents, including this. I'd also like to thank Councillor Andy Thea, Dr. Andy Thea, who's also helped to look over the Latin translation, make a couple of improvements here and there for what we've got before us today. Now, this precious record provides us with a captivating glimpse into the past, allowing us to connect with the events and individuals who shaped our town centuries ago. Recorded in the minutes of the meeting, we learn of the election of Robert Lettice as mayor. It was on Tuesday, following the feast of St. Michael the Archangel, on the 43rd year of the reign of King Edward III. He took a solemn oath, pledging to uphold the law and act in the best interests of our community, just as mayors have done, including yourself, Mr. Mayor, just recently, have done to this day. And interestingly, if you read it, it says that Roger Lettice, it was his third time as mayor. And by coincidence, in our 850th year, we have yourself, Mr. Mayor, who's in his third term as well. So a bit of synergy over the ages there. Now, Thomas Simond and Nicholas de Camera were elected as bailiffs, and they took the oath to execute their duties in accordance with the law. To secure their commitment, they had to pay 20 marks of silver in advance. Additionally, they ensured the payment be established to John, Duke of Lancaster, as required by the law. And in doing so, they safeguarded the mayor and the community, promising to indemnify any damages incurred during their term. The mind boggles, doesn't it, over that? Michael Mitchell was appointed the mayor's sergeant, who pledged to safeguard the mayor and the community from any wrongs committed during this term. Again, an interesting statement. Most of the most fascinating parts of the minutes is the meticulous care taken to oversee the quality of bread and beer consumed in the town. Now, Hugh D. Bucknar and Adam D. Gravenhonger were chosen as custodians and tasters with a solemn duty of accurately assessing the taste and quality of bread and beer sold within the borough boundaries. And they swore an oath to perform this task diligently, I bet they did, to raise genuine complaints if they encountered any deficiencies. So if there's any jobs going that we want to recreate, then that seems to be a good one, testing all the ale across the town with all of the nighttime venues we have. The council meeting also highlighted the admission of several individuals to the freedom of our town. Nicholas Snell was given freedom of the borough for 10 shillings, as was William Turon, who used his craft, although we don't know what his craft was. And then Adam Lismaive was given it only if he stayed within the town. If he left the town, he would have lost the freemanship. And then we also had Philippa Iranta, who's obviously a female, was given the freedom of the borough way back in 1368. Now, at the end of it, it refers to a sum and a common chest right at the end of these minutes. And I'm told by people that know that that's worth £6,750. And that will be enough for a skilled craftsman's wage for 2.5 years, or 26 cows, apparently. So let us remember and appreciate the significance of these ancient gatherings that have been held in this borough right up to this day. This is the latest incarnation of these, as a testament to the enduring spirit of our community and the commitment to the traditions we have that shape our town and have shaped our town throughout the ages. And let us find the inspiration in dedication and values exhibited by those who came before us. And it serves as a reminder of the enduring legacy that we inherit as councillors and we inherit as a community of this loyal, or ancient and loyal borough of Newcastle-under-Lyme. I so move these minutes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tagg. Can I invite you to move the minutes from 1368, please, and say a few words, which you've already done. Thank you, Councillor Tagg. Members, can the minutes be received, please? Can you put your hands in the air, please? Thank you. Fine, good. Agenda item 4, members, is to receive an address from Honorary Freeman of the Borough, Mr. Jim Worgan, about the Borough of Newcastle-under-Lyme's history. A report giving the origins of Newcastle-under-Lyme from 1066 to the present day can be found on pages 21 to 26 of your agenda. Mr. Worgan, would you please give your presentation, please? And take your time, Jim, because as we actually know, you can talk a glass eye to sleep, so I will make it short.
Mr. Mayor and Consort, Madam Mayoress, Councillors, Aldermen, ladies and gentlemen, no matter how hard you look, you will not find any trace of Newcastle-under-Lyme in the Great Domesday Book published on the death of William the Bastard or William the Conqueror, whatever you want to call him, in 1086, because it did not exist as a town. Newcastle grew up later on, but on Doomsday, you've got Clayton, Madeley, Betley, Podmore, Nutton, which was connected allegedly with King Canute. You've got Tork, and you've got Wolstanton, which was known as Wistantoni, and I shall refer to that at the end of my speech. In 1173, the charter was issued, long since lost, believed to have been loaned to Preston but never returned. And the reason we know of that was that in 1178-79, Henry II issued a charter to the Borough of Preston, granting them the same rights as he granted to my burgesses of Newcastle-under-Lyme in 1173. And that is the first indication I have had of the burgesses who 850 years later are still going strong. In 1149, at the height of the Civil War with the Empress Matilda or Maud, King Stephen issued a charter granting all his castles in Staffordshire, including the one at Newcastle. So that is the first record of Newcastle. The first record of Newcastle as a town is in the 1168 Pipe Rolls. And if you know where to look, as Dr. Robin Studd will tell you, Trentham entry in the Domesday Book was absolutely unique in Staffordshire because it contained two entries, one for Trentham and one for Newcastle, not as a town, but as a vill of the manor of Trentham. And from that, like Topsy, it grew. It soon became the economic hub of North Staffordshire. Everything that happened in North Staffordshire happened in Newcastle. It was on the main road from London to Carlisle and Derby to Chester. And obviously we had coaching inns and obviously stables for horses. And on either side of the high street today, you will notice various alleyways, both on the eastern and western sides, and they are allegedly ones that led to the stables. It became the economic hub, and 13 charters were granted between 1173 and 1974, which allowed the town to trade, but it could only trade by the people of Newcastle. And I believe that that was the burgesses. And the burgesses were an extremely important part of the community in the fact that not only did they elect the mayor and councillors, but they also elected the members of parliament, which we sent to London 500 years before our friends across the borough, the border, sent their first one. The last remaining coaching inn in the town is the facade of the Castle Hotel. And where Lancaster buildings stand now, that used to be the Roebuck Inn, another major coaching inn. In various parts of the town, small forges and furnaces existed. And if you imagine the iron market, well, that was used for making nails for the horses. And also there were only two people in England at that time making frying pans. One was a chap in Newcastle, and it was alleged that he would make 9 at a time. It grew and it grew, and it only sort of started to lose that growth with the coming of Josiah Wedgwood, rather like the Industrial Revolution started in 1760 with the accession of George III. It might have started before, it might have started after. So with the coming of Josiah Wedgwood, then the importance of the city of Stoke-on-Trent grew. A number of firsts, if I can briefly state, the first ever operational canal brought into use in North Staffordshire was Gresley's Canal from Apedale to Newcastle. Although the Trent and Mersey started in the 1760s, it didn't open until 1777. We also had the first turnpike road in the borough, which ran from Darlaston to Tork, And if you go to the Brampton Museum and go upstairs, there you will see the rather large Rhine Hill toll board, which gives indications of what people had to pay. And that was rescued by a former mayor, David Beckett of Betley, following the closure of the Bluebell Inn. It had the first standard gauge railway anywhere in North Staffordshire, and that was Firmston's line from his collieries in Leaseat to the Grand Junction Railway at Madeley. And the interesting thing about the Grand Junction Railway is I believe that the Grand Junction Railway wanted to make Newcastle its Midland headquarters, but the people of the borough decided we don't want riff-raff like that. And as a result, they went to Crewe, and the rest, as you say, is history. And as mentioned in the book, the first commercial porcelain made anywhere in England was made at Sammy Bell's, now the Belong Village. Just briefly, 2 or 3 people. John O'Gaunt. John O'Gaunt is remembered by the John O'Gaunt's Road and the John O'Gaunt's pub. He married into the Lancaster family in 1399, and on his death, the Duke of Lancaster title passed to his son, Henry Bolingbroke, who subsequently became king. And so the current Duke of Lancaster is His Majesty King Charles III. We had Philip Astley, the founder of the modern circus, who created the 42-foot diameter ring, which is still standard today. We also had Joseph Cook, pit boy from Silverdale, who ended up as the Prime Minister of Australia. And in 1919, June, he signed the Treaty of Versailles, which ended the First World War. Times changed, and the 1835 Reform Act took away from the townspeople the right to trade. And I believe that that was when the burgesses lost their right to trade. The booklet says the 6 town fields of Newcastle. I'm going to argue that there were 7: Clayton, Stubbs, King, Stoney, Brampton, Poole and Ash, most of which remain today. I haven't mentioned the castle at all. It was a royal castle and held on behalf of the king, and the pool was created by the damming of the Lyme Brook at Rotterdam, which still exists as a place. And it also was dammed at Poole Dam. And if you know where to look, you can actually see part of the dam. So the 1835 Reform Act brought in what we call the modern democracy, and the burgesses lost their rights. And over the years, they sold their 7 fields. And now, I believe on the 1st of March every year, the burgesses attend the meeting with the mayor when they receive their dividend. I realise I've gone on a little bit longer, but I want to quote something from a rather hilarious book.
1 minute, Jim.
Pardon? A rather hilarious book on the potteries in Newcastle-under-Lyme by a local author called, a local lecturer called Bill Morland. And he refers to, it is not surprising that the doomsday scribes made a mess of that. And by that, he was referring to Woolstanton as Wistantone and so many other names. Just imagine what the response of 20th century Anglo-Saxons would have been had Hitler's stormtroopers tried to make an inventory of similar proportions in 1940. In the days of William the Bastard, we have the hilarious situation where truculent Saxons, recently deprived of a great victory, are questioned by Gallic-speaking scribes who had to translate the mumbled falsehoods of a reluctant peasantry from a variety of carefully nurtured dialects into Latin shorthand on calf skin with a feather dipped in a mixture of soot and bull's urine. Thank you.
Gosh, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Councillor Tagg, would you like to say a few words, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Jim on behalf of everybody. That's I've seen and been to a number of your talks, and that was a real good one, really, about the history of the borough. And I think thank you for that. Your experience, 4 decades of research and extensive collections, and of course focused on the coal and ironstone mining history of North Staffordshire, but also that borough focus which you've just articulated so well, and your work for the museum over many years through the Friends of Museum and getting involved in the events and giving numerous talks there have really been an inspiration to people. I think if you need a one-stop shop of Newcastle's history, Jim is the person to go to. And of course, we've recognised that with Jim being the recipient of the first Lifetime Achievement Award for our Borough Heroes, and also he has Freedom of the Borough. So I'd just like to thank Jim again and ask everybody to do another round of applause. Thank you.
Served, Jim. Are you okay? Good, excellent. Members, the commemorative resolution is set out on pages 27 of your agenda. It reads, on the 850th anniversary of its royal charter, this council looks back with pride on the history and achievements of our ancient and loyal borough and forward with optimism to its further progress and success. The motion is proposed by Councillor Simon Tagg and seconded by Councillor Dave Jones. Councillor Simon Tagg, would you like to speak on your motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's a pleasure to move this 850 resolution. And just on a personal note, a few years back, with the help of the volunteers from the museum, I was able to trace my family's presence in the borough back to 1721, when the minute book at the time, which is a later version of what we've got printed here from the earlier one, records the award of freedom of the freeman of the borough to a George Tagg, who was a joiner, and that is a direct, obviously, ancestor of mine and Councillor Tagg, my father, who's a councillor here as well. So, and that's a generation before the Second Jacobite Rebellion marched south from the Midlands, more than a century before Queen Victoria came to the throne, and 200 years before Reginald Mitchell, who was born in Butt Lane, designed the Spitfire that saved this country in the Second World War. And of course, Newcastle was a fair-sized place in those days, with a street grid that still is largely unchanged in the town centre now. And we were the main town of North Staffordshire, and I think, as Jim said earlier, Stoke-on-Trent and its other Stoke, Burslem were just villages or hamlets at that time. And in the census of 1801, the population of the borough was still only 4,600 people. So it shows you how compact it was. And in a town of that size, it's strange to think that my ancestors would probably have known the family of young Philip Astley, who was born in 1742. And is celebrated now by the council as the lead founder of the modern circus. Along the varied history of our borough, particularly in mine this year, is a special one to mark the 850th anniversary of the Royal Charter of the Incorporation, granted by King Henry II in 1173, as Jim outlined earlier. This historic milestone has provided a perfect opportunity to celebrate the history, culture, and people of our borough, both past and present. The celebration have included a series of local history lectures, film shows at the museum, and the wonderful medieval enactment weekend, just a few weekends ago in the Rampton Park. I know many people were here at that, and it was lovely weather, a great day full of events that's really memorable for particularly young'uns and children as well, who enjoyed all the dressing up that took place and the shows and pageants that took place. We've had a commemorative church service at St Giles's Church. And there's been an 850 themed school visit, so we can really cross the generations with this and really spread the word about our town's history. And we've hosted a 850 artisan market, and community groups from across the borough have got in the spirit of the 850 and have badged events throughout the year, and there's more to come. And also tonight, we have this special commemorative council meeting this evening to draw it all together in official council capacity. Now, there are plenty of events going to take place for the rest of the year, and they can be found on the dedicated 850 page on the council's website. So please, everybody, look at those and enjoy those throughout the year, right up until December, which is keep the year going. Although the programme inevitably looks backwards, a key part of the aspect of the celebration is to look forward also and to create a lasting legacy. And later on the agenda, we've got a report on outlining some of those, which we'll come on to later. And in many ways, 2023 is a year of opportunity for the borough, our 850th year, with the £55 million regeneration on the back of the government investment in both Newcastle and Kidsgrove town centres, which is going to make a significant difference to our borough, with job creation and regeneration in those town centre areas, and job creation in Chatterley's Valley, up to 1,000 jobs. And just as in the 1930s, which saw the growth of the borough with better housing, and in the 80s and 90s, with the growth of business and industrial estates around the borough, will ensure that that levelling up money and that investment makes a difference to our residents. That's really key that we do that. I'd like to thank some of the sponsors for this year's celebration, notably Keele University, Aspire Housing, Staffordshire Foundation, Staffordshire Chambers of Commerce, Bet365, Options Management Limited, Betley Show, our local MP, and Chesterton One Stop Shop, last but not least, and many others that have contributed towards so we can have these events such as the one this evening. I'd also like to thank for our staff for putting together this commemorative agenda, and particularly you'll see the logo that is posted all over the place, the 850 logo. That was designed in-house by one of our graphics design staff named Della Mobley, and I'd like to thank her. And I thanked her personally yesterday, and I think she's sick of seeing it now. I've done that. And it's on everything, including the mugs, which I think the Mayor has already plugged that you can buy for £10 at the end of this meeting, which I think we wanted a specialised logo for this. We've got the Borough logo, which of course is at the bottom of the Mayor's table there, but this logo will go down in history as the one that represents, our 850th anniversary. So thank you to the council staff that have done that. One of the key aims, Mr. Mayor, for Newcastle-under-Lyme is it's the birthplace of notable individuals over the years. I've already mentioned Philip Astley, widely acknowledged to be the father of the modern circus. We've got Vera Britton, who wrote and celebrated the Testament of Youth, obviously. And obviously the outcome of and the pains of World War I and the Great War. And we've got the Silverdale-born Sir Joseph Cook, who worked in the mines as a 9-year-old. And in 1870 Act for Education, we turned him to the classroom and set him on the path that would lead in 1913 to becoming the Prime Minister of Australia. And of course, I mentioned earlier Reginald Mitchell, who he was born in Butt Lane and spent the first few months of his life in the borough, and then went on to that amazing aircraft that saved this country in 1940 in the early war years. Every month we're celebrating those people, those residents of the past. We've got themes such as creative arts, Newcastle's first, pioneers, business, industry, sports, and future stars of the borough. So look out for those as we go through the year. Because the people and the place that we come from has had its triumphs, and it's also had its tragedies. I get struck by the names in the remembrance books in St Giles's Church and elsewhere in the borough to those who lost their lives in both World Wars and other wars that have taken place since, and all those memorials around the borough for those pit disasters that have taken place that have affected our communities in the past as a pit and mining area historically. It's been a remarkable honour for me to be a councillor and leader of the councillor during such an historic year of the 850. And I think it bestows on us all a sense of perspective as we grapple with the day-to-day challenges that underpin the importance of the job that we do for the borough, and ensuring that we protect the people's future prospects to work, have good jobs and opportunities and a good education in this borough. And I think as we celebrate today, we also celebrate the work of our predecessors and use that as inspiration to move forward, Mr. Mayor, on the next step of this borough's journey as we look back on the last 850 years. Thank you. I so move the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Tagg. Councillor Jones, would you like to second the motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an absolute pleasure to second this motion. I'm afraid I don't have a family history in the area as rich as Councillor Tagg and Councillor Tagg Senior. As somebody who's made this borough his home, rather than being born here, I take a real avid curiosity in the history and our shared history within this borough. As has been mentioned by Jim, and I think it's quite a task to follow somebody as eminent as Jim when it comes to the history of this borough, but I shall do my best. The borough was founded by the construction of a new castle under the order of Henry II. Due to its strategic location on crossroads of important trade routes, this later developed into a thriving market town, as we see today. It's worth noting, and we have Alderman Studd here, who is a world expert on the Templar Order at Keele, but at the same time, Henry II gifted the Keele estates to the Templar Order, and we are one of the few places in the country that not only has a history with a Templar priory in the location, or former Templar priory within the location, but also living history of that with the window at St. John's Church in Keele. The town's fortunes continued to rise during the medieval period, marked by the establishment of the Guild. This provided an organised platform for various trades, fostering economic growth. And this was further enhanced by close proximity to the coalfields, but also to the flourishing pottery industry of Staffordshire. And we have that industry to thank for one of our most prominent former members of Parliament in Josiah Wedgwood. Josiah Wedgwood represented the borough in Parliament for 36 years, which is no mean feat, alongside at the same time a period of time on the County Council. Now, Josiah was ever outspoken, but one thing that always raises a great example of how he was firm in his belief of what was right. He rallied against the Mental Deficiency Act of 1913. This act would create a law with sweeping powers that would institutionalize anyone who was perceived to be an idiot, an imbecile, feeble-minded, or lacking moral convictions. He tabled 120 amendments to the bill and made 150 individual speeches on the bill in an attempt to filibuster. The bill later passed. He further supported liberal causes such as the suffragette and Zionist movements, a real pioneer for our borough. In subsequent centuries, Newcastle-under-Lyme embraced the Industrial Revolution with open arms. The town became a hub of industrial activity with coal mines, ironworks, and factories dotting the landscape. The arrival of the Trent and Mersey Canal and later the railway further fueled industrial growth, connecting us to larger market towns and facilitating the transportation of goods. It was during this second large industrial revolution where we have the pits to thank for another political son of the borough, Joseph Cook, born in Silverdale, later migrating to work in the pits of Australia, later to become MP and the 6th Prime Minister of Australia. And as Jim mentioned earlier on, to this day, we can count amongst our number a signatory to the Treaty of Versailles. I don't think Nantwich can claim the same. In reflection of our contribution to history, we would be neglectful if we were to miss out on the rich history of female pioneers of social change. Vera Brittain, the prominent pacifist feminist who served as a nurse during World War I, a fire warden in World War II, campaigned significantly for the protection of civilians during conflict. And it was also during the armed conflict of World War II that we see the contribution of Reginald Mitchell of Butt Lane through the invention of the war-winning Spitfire aircraft. And then finally, Fanny Deakin, who was born and lived in Silverdale, an advocate campaigner for the importance of child and maternal nourishment, and served on the precursor to this very council that we sit in today. As the Industrial Revolution began to fade, our society became more liberalized, and it's these female trailblazers who left a mark across our country. Yet our innovation for social change did not end there. In the aftermath of World War II, when there was a growing need for educational institutions that could foster a spirit of innovation, intellectual exploration, and interdisciplinary collaboration, we saw the establishment of Keele University. And it set out this unique and pioneering plan to break away from the traditional model of education, which emphasized narrow specialization, instead focusing on interdisciplinary studies and a holistic approach to learning. It was the first university in the UK to bring in the dual honours system, and it embraced that academic freedom. And as the university expands with its vet school, we remember the veterinary surgeon, Thomas Mayer, whose surgery was just across the road at the Brampton, who was instrumental in setting up what is now known as the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. He created or worked with others in the profession to regulate the profession. Though as we look to the past, we must be mindful of our future. The castle has gone, our pottery industry is a pale shade of its former glory. We've lost the pits, the ironworks, the factories. Yet, as we look towards the future, we see one that brings that pioneering spirit back into our borough. With a world-leading university in sustainability, we've seen the attraction of new industries within the green economy sector. As we see this part of the economy grow, we stand ready to lead the way in this industrial revolution. In finishing, as somebody who's made this place my home, I think all of us have one thing in common, and that's this very unfaltering belief that this borough is, without any doubt, the best place to live, study, and work. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, a round of applause, please. Gosh, heavens. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Members, we now move on to the debate on this item. Can I ask you to indicate by raising a hand if you wish to speak? Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to say a couple of things, really. If anybody ever wants to feel humble, there's a thing called the Western Front Association. It meets just up the road here every month on a Monday. And at the start of that meeting, they will read out a roll of the dead. And there will always be 10 or 15 young men who died during the Great War from its North Staffs and South Cheshire. And they'll read the communal garden places, you know, Stubbsgate or something, and I know Tunstall, and it's they have a minute's silence at the end of it, and it absolutely just chokes you to think that the history of this borough. And it's something that's worth going to. It's truly is mind-shattering. A couple of things really. Councillor Tagg is his name behind a bushel, of course. Tagg, 2 G's at the end, clear Viking. If you look in any book anyway, you'll find a surname ending in 2 G's is a Viking origin. And I think Nutten or Knuten bears testament to that. And that actually is, it's true. The other interesting thing I found when I was rooting around for things, Henry II, born in France, died in France, didn't actually speak English at all. But when you read the minutes of that meeting and the French overtones to it, which is 200 years later, is obviously. But I think Newcastle has such a fascinating history. I got to Apedale quite often with Councillor Fear and Councillor Parker and ex-Councillor Burgess over there for an Apedale breakfast. And you go up there, the place just reeks of history, industrial archaeology. It's absolutely fascinating. And you got things like Chester. Well, my Latin's not very good, but I think Chester is castle, isn't it? And the Roman fort at Chesterton, the Roman road going across the middle of Woolstanton Golf Course, going to Chesterton. I mean, the history of the thing is amazing. I went to a talk at the museum about Thomas Harrison, regicide. Somebody died beside Charles I's death warrant. And I went there and I was sufficiently inspired that I went to Bartomley. So I know it's not in Newcastle, but it's only just outside. And at Bartomley Church, there's a pub called the White Lion, which when I was a young man, I used to frequent. And the church there was, I think, 12 parliamentary troops were burnt to death there by the royalists. And apparently the Civil War was fairly civilized with prisoners, but not in this instance. So the history of the whole area is steeped in history. And I think we should be so proud of our loyal and ancient borough, 850 years, the charter. And like I think Councillor Jones said, where else in the world would you want to live but Newcastle? So I thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, I'd just like to echo what Councillor Jones has said. I too have an incomer to this borough, though I've been around here quite a lot now. But I would just like to give my personal thanks to everyone in the borough for being such a welcoming and friendly bunch. It was great to move here. You weren't made to feel an outsider, and it's been fantastic living here. Before that though, Mr. Mayor, a long time before that, even though I am an ancient historian in 2 senses now, unfortunately, once upon a time, an agitator in Judea said, what have the Romans ever done for us? And what have the Romans ever done for us here in Newcastle? Well, they gave us our name. essentially. Councillor Sweeney has alluded to Chesterton, and of course at Chesterton, you can just see it. In fact, the ditch just outside the school is where there was a Roman fort. And probably when the new castle was built, the remains, the earthworks of the old castle were the ones at Chesterton. So we are Newcastle because the old castle is the Roman castle at Chesterton. Down the road, I remember quite soon after I moved here, when they were doing some work on the industrial estate at Holditch, quite a large Roman building turned up. Little courtyard building with a colonnade at the front. Arguably, that was the precursor of Keele Service Station. It's likely to have been a horse-changing station on the Roman road running out to Roster and beyond to Derby, I suppose the Roman A50, you might say, in that regard. So we had things there. We're celebrating 850 today, but frankly, we've got a millennium more's history in the past. So arguably, you might say, if we look forward to another 850 years, we have just finished the Middle Ages of Newcastle. We've got our whole modern world to look forward to in that respect. Professor Charlton, the old professor of archaeology at the University of Keele, certainly thought that there may have been a Roman town under the golf course at Woolstanton. So arguably, in fact, old castle, so to speak, is still there waiting to be discovered. And wouldn't it be nice if in the next 850 years, somebody did a little bit of work there and turned out our real ancient history, so to speak. But today is a day, I think, for pride, for satisfaction, and also, I think, as both Councillor Tagg and Councillor Jones have said, also a day for optimism looking forward to the future. What a super place to live.
Thank you, Councillor Fair. Any more speakers, please? Nope, absolutely fine. Councillor Tagg, would you like to sum up before I put the motion to the vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing further to add. I think thank everybody for their comments, and I think sums up, as Andy just said there, a great place to live with a great history and a great future.
Could all those in favour of the commemorative resolution please raise their hands, please? Unanimous, thank you. Members, the next substantive item of business on this evening's agenda is the history of the High Steward. A copy of the report and associated papers can be found on pages 31 to 34 of your agenda. Councillor Simon Tagg, would you please now introduce the report? Councillor Simon Tagg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, in keeping with how we've approached the 850, sort of celebrating our past and even resurrecting some of the traditions that have been lost. One of them that's come forward is the history of a High Steward, which is a civic role that dates back to the Middle Ages. And it was held, it was a ceremonial role, but was a central part of the borough's life in the 17th century, particularly. And it's mentioned in some of our later charters as well as a role which was held by a person in the borough for life. The position of the borough was of High Steward resurrected in 1901 for reasons unknown. It may have been to do with the coronation of the King Edward VI, was it at that stage? Sorry, 7th, sorry. And the council minute books do not record why it was created, but it certainly was created as a post back then. And the role of the High Steward is sort of the actual role description is lost in history, but we can look at other areas which do have a High Steward for a sort of a potted history of what this person can do. Now, the minutes of other meetings show that the Grand Duke Michael was elected as the High Steward as well, which of course he's well known in the history of the borough, of course, and I think that's again at the death of Queen Victoria and the ascension of Edward VII and the coronation in 1902. The last holder of the role was in the 1950s, and that was Lord Webb Johnson, and he died in 1958, and the position was never filled again after. So the recommendation is that we note the historical role of the High Steward in Newcastle-under-Lyme, and we authorise the Chief Executive in consultation with the Leader of the Council to further investigate and pursue the relevant processes to re-establish the role of High Steward for Newcastle-under-Lyme. I move those. Thank you.
Councillor Tagg. Councillor Bentley-Smith, Would you like to second the motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I wish to second the motion for the re-establishment of the office of High Steward, and I'm grateful, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity and honour to do this. The importance of history, and I'm sure Councillor Fear will agree with me, cannot be overestimated. Unfortunately, many in modern society regard history as something to be left in the past, perhaps regarding history as some form of out-of-date geography with no useful role. They are wrong. Speaking momentarily on behalf of the residents of Betley, and I hope, Mr. Mayor, as one of the ward councillors for Madeley and Betley, you will not rule me out of order. At Betley School on the 19th of June, we were fortunate to have a visit from yourself, the mace bearers, the sergeant, and the High Constable. The children learnt much about the history of our borough, the charter, the 850th anniversary celebrations on that day. They also learned how a democracy works when they voted not to have the mayor arrested by the High Constable. The event has had a lasting and very favourable impression on those children who were totally engaged in what they saw and heard. They are, of course, the future of our borough and our democracy. So could I formally thank you and the others I've mentioned for that visit. Whilst I know, Mr. Mayor, that your diary is full and overflowing, and to atone for my trespass into your responsibilities as a councillor, perhaps there will be an opportunity to repeat such a visit to a school in my own ward of Thistlebury. What would the children have learnt, and more importantly, remembered, if they'd not seen the truncheon, the staff, and the mayor being protected by the maces? Therefore, it is important, if not vital, that we do not consign and then leave important officers such as that as High Steward to the Brampton Museum. What better time, what better year to reinstate the office of High Steward? We must always carpe diem, and this is the moment to seize it whilst not carping at it, which could of course be the case if we do not seize it tonight. Therefore, I hope members will vote in favour of this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Betley-Smith. Members, we now move on to the debate on this item. Can I ask you to indicate by raising a hand if you wish to speak? Yes, of course. We've got Councillor Jones and Councillor White. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to propose an amendment to the report. The amendment takes away nothing from the actual report. It just adds an addition to the proposal. That is to add a third item under proposal, which is, should council receive confirmation that we can proceed with the role, we propose, or we recommend the Chief Executive to establish an independent appointments committee. The committee shall comprise of 3 aldermen agreed by group leaders. The independent appointments committee shall receive nominations for the role of High Steward, appraise the nominations before making a recommendation to full council for consideration of the appointment. The reason we propose this is today we will be creating a significant number of aldermen. We feel that the honour to nominate the person to take up the role of High Steward should fall to them. That group will then make the recommendation and council will approve that recommendation. Thank you.
Before we start. Amendment, please. Councillor Fox-Hewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to second that amendment and reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Betley-Smith, do you?
We'll accept that amendment.
Yes. Finish my words. Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I too think that amendment is a sensible one. So thank you for that. I just really wanted to say that, as well as the proposer and the seconder have already outlined, we talk very often about the significance of our loyal and ancient borough and the historical significance of that. There's not many boroughs within England that can say it has its history. There's also, as you're very, very well aware, Mr. Mayor, and he is here tonight, your High Constable. And we are one of only 2 boroughs within England that actually has a High Constable, the other being Devizes in Wiltshire. So it is something, again, to be proud of. The fact that there was a High Steward, which basically hasn't been replaced since 1956, is significant. And it's also significant to note that history says that the re-election of a High Steward traditionally has been upon the death of a monarch and the coronation which subsequently came about. So I'm fully in favour of this, and I also think it is important to follow that tradition and to therefore try and appoint the High Steward within this year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor White. No. Just before I put this matter to the vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've got a resolution there which I think could be supported. I think let's look to see whether we can reinstate this. And I agree with Councillor White, if we can do it in this 850 year, that would be great. And we've got a process then for also for the appointment of it, which I think is great. So let's move ahead with this and hope everybody will vote in favour. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The recommendation has been moved and seconded. Could all those in favour please raise their hands, please, very high. Excellent, unanimous. Thank you. Members, the next substantive item on business on this evening's agenda is an update on the Council's 850th programme and legacy. A copy of the report can be found on pages 37 to 42 of your agenda. Councillor Simon Tagg, will you please now introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I said earlier, I'm really pleased to bring this report about the legacies which we have attached to the 850 celebrations. I think it was really key right from the beginning, as you know, Mr. Mayor, as you were involved in the putting together a programme of events, that the legacy was really important to us, that we leave something for the future. And I think, obviously, as you'll see in the report tonight, there's a legacy programme which comprises culture, leisure, educational benefits. It will have a lasting impact on our communities. And one of the highlights of the celebration so far was the Borough Heroes Awards, which took place at the Mayor's Charity Ball of the former Mayor, Councillor Jill Burnett, which recognised individuals who've made an exceptional contribution to our community. And I'd like to congratulate those who had 3 awards initially, congratulate those people again here. Bryony Bowler, who was our community champion, Hannah Woolas, which was a young hero, and then somebody called Jim, I don't know who that is, who was recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award. So I think Jim is here, but the other 2 winners aren't. But can we give those people a round of applause again for their achievement? Worthy winners, all of them. And we hope to carry the awards on into future years as well and build them up, hopefully, into a prestigious event which we can be proud of. Now, education plays, Mr. Mayor, a pivotal role in our legacy programme, and as part of the 850 anniversary, we aim to encourage young people in Newcastle-under-Lyme to take advantage of those world-class opportunities that are provided by our local world-beating university, Keele University, and I think Councillor Jones mentioned it earlier, and others have mentioned it. The asset, the jewel in the crown of the borough is that Keele University. Now, Give Energy, a local battery storage manufacturer, has partnered with us to develop a green energy engineering skills within our borough, and with the fund and a residential programme at Keele University, where a group of up to 10 students from low aspirational areas can experience university life, explore sustainability and clean energy, and also learn more about the borough's heritage. and a £1,000 bursary will be awarded to one exceptional participant from this programme who secures a place at Keele University to further support their educational journey. So I think that's really brilliant. Another notable project, which is actually something which is on display to the left of the Mayor, to the right as we look there, is this installation of a statue of a late Queen Elizabeth in the Queen's Garden. Now, obviously, that is not the statue we'll be putting in there. We're looking to aim to do a life-size statue, but to actually enable us to do that, we've created with a world-renowned designer of sculptures. You'll know him from the Beatles statues and also the Stanley Matthews statue, which is outside the Stoke City Stadium over in Stoke. And I think people that have seen close up this small version, the maquette, which will be for sale, and hopefully selling 11 of them will enable us to then afford the full life statue outside in the Queen's Gardens, which will be placed at eye level, so people can actually go and touch the hand, because the hand is protruding there to show that the Queen would want to shake hands. And it's actually taken from a picture taken when the Queen was visited Newcastle in 1973, which was her 800th anniversary, and she was walked down the High Street past the Guildhall. So Mr. Edwards, who has done this for us, as I say, is a renowned sculptor, and we hope to be able to sell those 11. If we don't, we will see how many we sell and then go out to a public donation scheme to make up the money. And that has been used in the past for other sculptures and statues, and also the repair of statues in the borough. So if we need to do that, we will go to it. But we're very sort of confident, because of the renownedness of Mr. Edwards, that we'll be able to sell the required ones that will contribute to that, having what will be an amazing statue for the Queen's Gardens, which will complement the Queen Victoria statue that is already there. Lastly, as it says in the report, we've established an 850 lime forest planted in Silverdale, and this comprises 850 lime trees and 2,000 native broadleaf trees. It aligns with our urban tree planting strategy and sustainable environment strategy to plant more trees in the borough, to cut our carbon emissions, and also to make our places greener. So I move the report with the recommendations as set out in the council notes, the programme of activities which I touched on in my remarks earlier, and also that the development of the legacy programme, as I pointed out, with the awards, the educational programme, and also the statue and the lime forest. I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tagg. Councillor Jones, did you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if there's an official seconder. I'll let the official seconder speak first.
Thank you. Councillor Senior, would you like to second the motion, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I have great pleasure in seconding this. This year, this 850 year, hasn't just been about this year. It's been about a legacy. And I'm not going to repeat what the leaders just said, but the one for me really is the statue of the late Queen Elizabeth II. If you go and have a look at it at the end of this meeting, it's absolutely fantastic. The chap who's done it is so clever. It is marvellous. It's inspirational. It's absolutely superb, and very, very clever lad. But no, I think Councillor Tagg's taken all my best lines. So I'm very happy to second this proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeney. Members, we now move to the debate on this item. Can I ask you to indicate by raising a hand if you wish to speak? And we say again, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think this report highlights some really great work that's going on, something that we are very much in support of and feel is good to highlight some of the great things that are happening in the borough and have happened in the borough. There's a few things I'd just like to pick up on. The first of which is our communion champion, Bryony. It would be remiss of me as the councillor for Keele not to mention how much of an integral part of the community Bryony is. A real inspiration to the rest of us to develop a Scouts, Clubs and Beaver group from nothing into one of the biggest in the borough is absolutely fantastic. They go from strength to strength, and it's been her will, determination to make that happen. And anyone who is willing to occupy my son for 2 hours a week is a hero in my books. But I really do think we have a community champion there that is more than worthy of the title. Moving on to the education programme, really commend this. I think it's absolutely critical that we look at the opportunities we can to get those within our borough who come from those lower participation areas in higher education into or onto Keele campus and engage in. All the evidence shows that kids from lower participation backgrounds, if you get them onto university campuses, they're more likely to go on to university. One thing I would say, and Councillor Tagg has clarified this slightly with a cohort of 10, I was a little bit concerned with a bursary to one of the cohort because I think with these kids, the competitive nature is often a challenge. And if council was minded to look at that, we would be minded to support seeing that expanded to the whole cohort should they subsequently secure a place at Keele University rather than have that competitive element in there. And then finally, very briefly, the statue, I think it is fitting that we have a statue to our longest serving monarch. And I will say with these statues, they're often stuffy. They're these stuffy artistic poses. And it's a real pleasure to see a real pose for a statue. And the fact that this has come from a photograph during Her Majesty's visit to the borough, I think makes it all that special. So yes, absolutely fantastic to see the model there and look forward to seeing the full version when it's on display. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Tagg, would you like to sum up before we put this matter to the vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the comments. I think we can take the educational point offline and have a look at that, I think. Just on we mentioned two of the, well, we know Jim obviously is here, and you've mentioned Brian. I'll mention Hannah Wallace in more detail. She's helped out and works as a pool guard, etc. at Kisgo Sports Centre. Obviously, one of the things we've achieved through some of that government funding we were talking about earlier and brought that back into use as a sports centre and a swimming pool. And she's got some health issues as well. So even with those health issues, she's volunteered and she's helping to, keep that centre going, because that is based on volunteer help to keep that centre and keep the membership up. So I think just to mention for Hannah there that she's obviously didn't manage to make it to the awards because of illness up at Keele neither. So, but she was presented with it at a later date. So just to cover that, we've covered all three of them. But I think great. I think as I said at the beginning, as you know, Mr. Mayor, as members know, we've wanted to work on a legacy for this. And I think it's not just about things that go on in the Brampton Park. It's not just about talks. It's not just about meetings like this. It's actually about things that affect people's lives and change their lives. And I think if we do manage to get the statue outside, it will be a tourist attraction for Newcastle. And we believe it's one of the first commissioned statues since the death of the late Queen. And we obviously want to get it in as soon as possible. I think we're aiming for early next year if all things are being well. And it will complement our brilliant Queen's Gardens out there. And it'll be uniquely two Queen's Gardens, won't it, with the two monarchs there. So I'd thank everybody for what they've said, and hopefully they'll support the recommendations which I moved earlier. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tagg. The recommendations have been moved and seconded. Could all those in favour please raise their hands, please? Yeah, unanimous. Thank you. Members, the next item of business on this evening agenda is to recognise the long and dedicated service given to the Borough Council by 10 of our former councillor colleagues. This follows the decision made at the special council meeting held on the 23rd of November 2022, when it was resolved to confer Honorary Alderman status upon Sylvia Burgess, Julie Cooper, Tony Kieran, Mary Maxfield, Mark Olczewski, Marion Reddish, Carl Robinson, now we say Payne, is that right? Yes, excellent. Elizabeth Shenton, Sandra Simpson, and Julie Walklett. Unfortunately, Sandra Simpson is unable to join us this evening, so she will receive her certificate in due course. The resolutions passed at this special meeting are summarised on pages 45 to 47 of your agenda. I will now call upon the leader of the council, Councillor Simon Tagg, to read the resolution written at the top of the page of 45 and speak in support of the Aldermen. I will then ask Councillor David Jones to also address the motion and speak in support of the Aldermen. Councillor Simon Tagg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It gives me great pleasure that pursuant in section 249 of the Local Government Act 1972, the undermentioned persons, as you've named, Mr. Mayor, be admitted to the Honorary Aldermen of the Borough of Newcastle-under-Lyme in recognition of their long and dedicated service to the people of the borough through the performance of their duties as members of the Borough Council. And I'll then go on to say that it's always a pleasure to move the list of aldermen, and particularly this year. That's why we've put it together with this meeting. It's a really special occasion. And I think that Local Government Act enables us to confer that Honorary Alderman on persons who have, in the opinion of the Council, rendered that eminent service through their role as a councillor. And that can be through the longevity of them being a councillor, or it can be through them being cabinet members, chairs, mayors, etc. over the years. And following the last Borough Council election in May 2022, a large number of members left the council, some by their own choice, some not by their own choice. The electorate made a different decision than what they were expecting. So we have these names before us this year, and there is a mix of positions there, people that have been mayor, council leaders, cabinet members, chairs and vice chairs, and also really long-serving members. And I've totted them all up, how many years service of all these councillors, and it comes to 158 years of service to the residents of the borough. There's also a couple of councillors that were previously overlooked for aldermanships, which have been included this time as well, which we've managed to do this time. And there's too many examples, I think, to go through, but I will just pick out some, and you shouldn't really pick some out, but I'm going to because of the extraordinariness of it, is June Moore-Clate. Where is June? Where are you, June? Hi, June. 35 years as a councillor. That's longer than most prison sentences for. And I know you really enjoyed your. Yep. And well deserved that you become an alderman of the borough. Marion Reddish, obviously a former mayor and a cabinet member. Elizabeth Shenton, a former leader of the council and also deputy mayor. And I've worked with all the councillors that are here tonight in many capacities. They've all been on the council while I've been on the council, and such as Mark Olczewski, Carl Robertson-Payne. I'm naming them all now, aren't I? Julie Cooper, Sylvia Burgess, Sandra Simpson, Mary Maxfield, who was a cabinet member back in the day, Tony Kieran, who was a cabinet member and also leader of the Labour groups. I've named them all now. But 158 years service. And when we're talking about hundreds of years of the borough, you've got a significant, service there by those members. So I congratulate them all and look forward to them to receiving their certificates in due course. And I will move officially that, as I did at the beginning, that resolution. Thank you.
Just before, thank you, Councillor Tagg. A round of applause for everybody, please, up there. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is an absolute pleasure to second this motion. When I was first elected onto this council, it took me a while to truly understand the concept of alderman, because in many professions, when you retire, you tend to go away from your place of employment as quickly as possible and never return. But it seems in local politics, we do the opposite. You see, serving on this council is an honour above all others, a privilege that few get to achieve. Yet it's also a great challenge, as things are not always perfect. We're not infallible, yet we're expected to always get it right, regardless of what else might be going on outside of our control. So when we find people who are able to withstand this pressure, able to command the respect of their residents, to return them to this council for over 10 years, we hold on to them. We prevent them from running away, and we recognise them as aldermen. For the first time that I've been involved with this, I'm honoured that I have served in the council with most of you. And I can say without hesitation that each and every one of you has served their residents and the people of this borough with great distinction. You've all left a legacy within your wards, within this chamber and made this council a better place for your service. On a personal note, you've all had an impact on me and members of my group that has developed us into the councillors that we are today. It would be remiss of me as leader of the Labour group to fail to single out the former occupants of this role that we are honouring tonight. Lizzie, Tony and Kyle all held this position before and know the great honour, yet the great pressures it brings. Having served this group during respective times as group leaders, I can't express enough how well you led this group, often during difficult times. You'll always have my respect and this group's respect for the hard work that you put in. Also, it would be remiss not to draw attention to June and her incredible service to this borough. Winning one election is an incredible feat, but winning multiple elections such that you serve a total of 35 years is an achievement that I don't think we will see repeated anytime soon. In closing, tonight we heard much about the history of the borough, with some glimmers of the future and what that might hold for this loyal and ancient borough. You are all a significant part of that. As we honour your service, we look forward to seeing you at future civic events, to corner us, to share your opinions and experiences, to help us make better judgments. You are all more than worthy of this honour, and it's my absolute pleasure to second this nomination. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Members, I take this opportunity to remind you all that there will be a buffet following this evening's meeting, and which will provide you with opportunity to speak with our newly appointed Honorary Aldermen. I'm facing to the Aldermen, which I'm going to ask you to actually stand, please. Thank you. In accordance with custom, I beg to tender to you as an Honorary Alderman of the Borough of Newcastle-under-Lyme the right hand of fellowship and present each of you with a framed certificate to commemorate with you with a new status as an Honorary Alderman. Please come forward when I call out your name and sign the Roll of Alderman with the Chief Executive and then receive your certificate. That should go round, so yeah, excellent. Alderman, Hal Robinson Payne. Yes, I do apologize. Tony Kieran. Marion Reddish. Mary Maxfield. Sylvia Burgess. Julie Cooper. Michael Chesky. Elizabeth Shakespeare. Jude Walford. Yes. Yeah. We've finished now, isn't it? In bringing this special evening to a close, I thank you all for attending and extend an invitation for you to join me for refreshments in the library, please. Thank you. And just give a round of applause for everybody in this room. Thank you.